Greetings and blessings. Many Christians today believe that we are living in the last days. Even people who don't believe Christ can sense that something is terribly wrong with this world. All the warnings that we were given by the prophets, by the apostles, and by our Lord himself should make us stop and pause and reflect on the season in which we are living. Are we living in the last days? The last days have been here since the ascension of Jesus Christ. It was Paul the Apostle who believed that he would see the second coming of our Lord. And here we are, 2,000 years later. It was Peter who told us in the last days there will be mockers and there will be scoffers, and they will say, "Where is the Christ? You've been saying that forever." But I believe firmly that because we have to have clarity on what our future may very well look like. I've talked a lot about suffering in my previous messages, and I believe that this all ties in together because in these last days that we may be very well living in, according to the Bible, it's not going to get any better, but gradually, increasingly worse and worse. And I believe that we may even be seeing the beginning of the birth pains. So therefore, with that being said, I want to read to you what Paul the Apostle wrote to young Timothy 2,000 years ago. He writes in 2 Timothy chapter 3, he says, "But understand this, that in the last days," understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, perilous times. And we are seeing an epic display of difficulty in every aspect of our world today. Now, was there difficulty in every generation? Of course there was. But we also are seeing such increase of the difficulty that we're facing that it seems like every day we hear something new that blows our mind away. I mean, just think, before, just in the last couple of years, how much this world has changed. We are seeing such chaos and disorder everywhere, but yet we have to, as Christ followers, be steady and understand these seasons and times in which we live, because we were given these instructions to understand what days we are living in. Paul said that times of difficulty will come, right? In the last days. He says, "For people will be lovers of self." Everything is about self lately. Everyone wants to better themselves, with what's good for yourself, with self. Everything is self. And Satan is okay with self because he wants you to love yourself. But what did Jesus Christ say? He said, deny yourself. He said, pick up your cross and follow me. The apostles knew very well what he was talking about when he said, pick up your cross and follow me. They were very familiar with Roman crucifixions. So they knew by picking up your cross meant that you are willing to go to your death for me. By denying yourself. He says if you love your life, you will lose it. But he says if you lose your life, you will save it. But if you lose your life for my sake and the gospel's, you will save it. So we have to deny ourselves and pick up our cross and follow Christ, no matter what the cost. Paul says, remember, he says, in the last days, people will be lovers of self. They will be lovers of money. They will be proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit. They will be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. They will have the appearance of godliness, but they will deny the power of God. He says, avoid such people. So all these things that Paul describes to us, we're seeing these characteristics in people on an epic level today. I'll let you know that when Paul was writing all of his letters, who was Paul addressing in all of his letters? Paul was addressing the church. So therefore, as he's writing to young Timothy, he's ultimately describing what the church will look like in the last days. Because we can assume that worldly, secular people will have these characteristics, but he is addressing the churches. And we are seeing so much chaos and disorder within the churches. There's no unity. There's no one body. If we are all in Christ, just like in Acts, he says, they will have all things in common. So why can't we all be of one body with one head, Christ? We are all different members of one body working together, but we all have different abilities. So the characteristics that I wanted to go through and point out to you that these are the things that we see in people that really point us to knowing that we are in the last days. Now, in the coming sessions, I want to go over some of the things that we will see that were taught to us, and how we can recognize that we really are in the last days. And again, are we? I think there's some significant, in fact, I know that there's some significant events and things that must happen before we can truly know that we are in the last days. But as we are in now, I think we are in the beginnings of these birth pains. And so, again, we have to be very mindful, because we were commanded to know the seasons and to be able to test all spirits and to be watchful, eagerly awaiting our blessed hope. That's our whole purpose, is eagerly awaiting the blessed hope. Who is our blessed hope? Christ. As we keep the oil in our lamps, we wait for him patiently. So in these coming sessions, I want to point out to you some of the things that we can look for and know that we are in these days, that we might very well be the generation to see our Lord return a second time. Of course, a lot of people may think this is a fringe idea or kooky, but yet I think it's one in which we need to have a clear foundation of what it may very well look like in our future. And again, I think this is all the suffering inside tied in, because we have to know how to suffer through some terrible, as Paul writes, some terrible times, some difficult times, some perilous times. So we have to, just like all the apostles suffered in many ways, and all the apostles, was that just for them and not for us? We have to get out of this mindset where we think that we are above all of that suffering. So if you haven't subscribed, I would ask you to subscribe, to like, to comment, to share, because more people need to be informed of what is our future. The whole Bible explains our future. So with that being said, I pray and I hope that you have a blessed day, and may the peace of God that surpasses all understanding guard your heart, guard your mind, and guard your soul. And love your neighbor as yourself. Treat others how you want to be treated. Above all, love God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. May the peace and love of Jesus Christ be with you today and forever.